How do you survive the inflationary times ahead? That's the question we're going to answer. But first, you need to understand what's really happening. Because this isn't just about rising prices. It's about a broken system, a silent theft, and a storm that could wipe out your savings before you even notice. The signs are already here. And if you're not prepared, you'll pay the price. You've probably felt it. Groceries that used to cost $50 now eat up $80. Insurance bills climbing without explanation. Rents rising faster than paychecks. But here's the thing. This isn't a temporary glitch. It's not just the economy. It's a signal that the system is under stress and that the real value of your money is eroding slowly but relentlessly. Most people don't see it happening because inflation doesn't knock on your door all at once. It creeps in through every price tag, every policy, every new government program that promises relief and delivers debt. And it's not just about prices, it's about control. When a government can't stop spending, but can't raise taxes without backlash, there's only one tool left: printing more money. And history shows, every time that tool gets abused, the results are devastating. This isn't just an economic issue, it's a survival issue. Because the next wave of inflation won't just shrink your savings, it could reset everything you think you know about work, wealth, and security. So let's break it down. What's really driving this crisis? Why does the system keep choosing the path of inflation? And most importantly, what can you do to protect yourself? There's a simple law in economics that almost nobody talks about. It's called Stein's law, and it says, if something cannot go on forever, it will stop. Sounds obvious, right? But here's the uncomfortable truth. The way our governments spend money cannot go on forever. Because we've built a system where debt grows faster than income, where interest payments are growing faster than productivity, where the economy must keep expanding just to stay afloat. Think of it like this. The red line is our national income, what we actually produce. The blue line is our total debt, public, private, corporate, municipal, all of it. And those two lines, they're drifting apart fast. That's the problem. Eventually, the interest on all that debt becomes unpayable. And when that happens, governments face a brutal choice: raise taxes to painful levels, slash spending in politically impossible ways, or inflate the money supply to make the debt cheaper. Guess which one they choose? Printing money isn't just easier, it's invisible. At first, no debates in Congress, no headlines, no votes, just digits, added to a screen. Quiet. Silent, deadly, and it works until it doesn't. Because when you print money without creating value, all you're doing is diluting the money already in circulation. It's like adding water to soup. At first, it feeds more people, but eventually it's just warm water, with nothing left to nourish anyone. And here's where it gets worse. The people closest to the source of new money, big banks, asset managers, hedge funds, they get the full flavor first. Before prices rise, before the dollar weakens. But by the time that money reaches you, groceries are up, rent is up, and your paycheck still tastes like soup. This isn't just inequality, it's engineered inequality, baked into the system, and every time the debt grows larger, the temptation to inflate becomes stronger. But we're not just talking about prices at the store. We're talking about trust in the very thing you're paid with. And once that breaks, throughout history, desperate governments have turned to the printing press to escape debt. And every time, the pattern is the same. Short-term relief, followed by long-term collapse. Let's start with Germany in 1923. Crushed by war reparations after World War I, Germany didn't have the money to pay, so the government printed more. At first, it seemed to work. Bills were paid, salaries delivered, but soon, prices began to rise. Then they doubled. Then tripled, then exploded. People carried wheelbarrows of cash just to buy bread. Workers demanded to be paid twice a day before prices jumped again. By the end of the year, it took 200 billion marks to buy a single loaf. Savings? Gone. Retirements? Destroyed. And in that chaos came extremism. That collapse didn't just ruin an economy. By its heart, it shattered a society. Fast forward to Zimbabwe 2007. Once a breadbasket of Africa, Zimbabwe printed money to cover budget gaps after a collapse in agricultural output. And the result? Hyperinflation reached 89.7 sextillion% per year. That's 89 followed by 20 zeros. Money was used as toilet paper, wallpaper, even toys for children, because it was cheaper than buying actual paper. Then came Venezuela, starting in 2016. With the world's largest oil reserves, Venezuela should have been rich. But years of overspending, nationalization, and money printing to fund welfare programs led to collapse. Supermarkets emptied, hospitals shut down, people fled by the millions. Banknotes littered the streets like trash. These aren't just history lessons, they're flashing red warnings because every one of those governments thought they were different, that they could print just enough, that their system could handle it, until it couldn't. And here's the terrifying part. The early stages of those collapses felt a lot like now. Gradual inflation, denial from the top, people quietly adjusting their lives, thinking it's just temporary. Until one day, it's not. Some people might say, sure, printing money for citizens is dangerous, but what if a government only prints money to pay off its foreign debt? Seems smart, right? Just fire up the presses, pay what you owe, and move on. But here's the problem. The world is watching. When a country prints money, for any reason, that new money still enters the system. It inflates the supply. It signals weakness. And global markets don't ignore signals. Foreign lenders, banks, investors, governments track everything. They know how much money is circulating. They monitor inflation, interest rates, currency values. And when they sense that a government is paying debt with funny money, they run. Confidence collapses. The value of that currency drops. Interest rates spike. Or worse, new loans dry up entirely, because no one wants to be repaid in money that's losing value by the hour. Think of it this way. If you loaned your friend $1,000 and they tried to repay you with monopoly money they printed at home, you wouldn't just reject it. You'd probably never lend to them again. That's what happens when nations inflate away their obligations. Even the idea of it, the whisper of desperation, sends shockwaves through international markets. And once trust disappears, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. Your credit rating drops. Your currency tumbles. Your economy gets squeezed from both sides, internal inflation and external rejection. So the next time someone says, "Why not just print to pay off our debt?" the answer is simple. Because the moment you do, you stop being a serious economy. And the world stops taking you seriously. If printing money doesn't work, what does? The answer is simple, but not easy. Creating real value. Wealth isn't paper. It isn't numbers on a screen. It's what those numbers represent. Food, homes, services, ideas, labor. Money is just a tool, like a measuring stick. It helps people trade what really matters. But if the stick keeps changing size, nobody can trust the trade. That's why real prosperity doesn't come from stimulus. It comes from productivity, from doing more with less. So how do countries grow real wealth? Education, so people can gain skills that create value. Infrastructure, so goods, services, and ideas can move faster. Innovation, so new businesses can emerge and old ones can evolve. Trustworthy institutions, so rules are clear and corruption is punished. Think of it like a farm. You can throw money at the soil, or you can plant seeds, water them, and wait. One creates growth. The other just creates mud. Wealth is the harvest of effort, structure, and time. And economies that understand this, that invest in systems, not just spending, are the ones that thrive in the long run. Japan, South Korea, Singapore, all grew from scarcity to abundance, not by printing, but by producing. They understood something most countries forget. You don't get rich by printing diplomas. You get rich by learning, by building, by doing. So the next time inflation starts rising and politicians promise a quick fix, ask yourself, are they planting seeds or just watering the mud? Inflation doesn't just distort prices. It distorts behavior. When money loses value over time, people stop thinking long term. Why save for tomorrow if your dollars are worth less next month? So instead, they spend. Quickly, emotionally, desperately. They take on debt. They chase short-term gains. They abandon caution for survival, and in doing so, they fuel the very problem they're trying to escape. This is the hidden cost of inflation, not just the price of groceries, but the price of trust. Trust that your savings will hold value. Trust that effort today will be rewarded tomorrow. Trust that your children will have a better shot than you did. When that trust dies, people stop saving. And when savings disappear, so does capital, the fuel that powers business, innovation, and growth. It's a vicious cycle. Inflation rises. People stop saving. Less investment, slower growth, more money printing, more inflation. And at the center of it all is a broken incentive. Punish the saver, reward the spender. But that's not how strong economies are built. They're built on patience, discipline, delayed gratification, on millions of people working, saving, building, trusting that their money means something. Inflation severs that link. And when it does, even the most productive societies begin to fray. Because if money is just melting ice in your pocket, why bother planning for the future? Inflation doesn't affect everyone equally. In fact, it often benefits those at the very top and punishes everyone else. How? Because the people closest to the source of new money, governments, central banks, large corporations, asset managers, they get it first. Before prices rise, before the currency weakens, before the damage spreads, they use that fresh money to buy assets, stocks, real estate, commodities. And as inflation picks up, those assets rise in value. Meanwhile, the average person, they get the money last. After prices have already surged, they don't own appreciating assets. They rent, they work, they try to save, but the value of their savings melts faster than they can refill the jar. This is what economists call the Cantillon effect. The idea that where new money enters the economy matters. And when it enters at the top, the rich accelerate, while the middle and working class get left behind. Over time, this creates a system that feels rigged. Not because people are lazy, but because the rules are quietly tilted in favor of those who control the faucet. Every time we inflate our way out of debt, we're transferring wealth from savers to spenders, from workers to asset holders, from the many to the few. And this isn't theory. We can see it in the data. The bottom 50% of the population owns just a sliver of total wealth. Meanwhile, the top 1% keeps pulling further ahead, not by working harder, but by writing a system that rewards ownership over labor. It's not just unequal, it's engineered inequality, built into a machine that runs on endless money and silent theft. And the longer it runs, the harder it becomes to stop. An economy runs on more than money. It runs on trust. Trust that the dollars you earn today will be worth something tomorrow. Trust that the rules are fair. Trust that effort will be rewarded, not erased by inflation or captured by elites. But inflation erodes that trust, quietly. Relentlessly. It starts with prices, then spreads to wages, savings, debt, rent, insurance, and before long, it infects institutions. People begin to question everything. Why is my paycheck shrinking in real terms? Why do politicians keep spending what we don't have? Why does Wall Street keep winning while Main Street struggles? The answers aren't comforting. And so, frustration grows. You see it in the streets, in the polls, in rising extremism, on both ends. Because when people feel the system is broken and stacked against them, they don't just lose faith in money. They lose faith in leadership, in democracy, in the future. And that's the real danger. Inflation doesn't just damage bank accounts. It shatters social cohesion. History is full of examples. Weimar Germany, economic collapse gave rise to authoritarianism. Venezuela, runaway inflation sparked mass migration and political breakdown. Argentina, decades of money mismanagement left generations disillusioned and impoverished. Each time, the pattern is the same: monetary failure, social unrest, political chaos, and once trust breaks, it's almost impossible to glue back together. Because unlike money, trust isn't printed. It's earned, slowly, over time. And when it's gone, everything becomes unstable. That's the moment when people start asking not just how do I survive, but is this system even worth saving? You can't stop inflation, but you can stop it from destroying your life. Because when a system breaks, you have two choices: wait for someone to fix it, or build your own safety net. Here's the truth. Most people will wait. They'll trust the next stimulus, the next promise, the next election. But those who survive and thrive take action early. So what does that look like? First, own things that can't be printed. Gold and silver. The oldest forms of money. No counterparty risk. No inflation risk. Bitcoin. Scarce by design, decentralized by nature, and increasingly adopted as a digital store of value. Productive real estate, especially in stable locations, with income-generating potential. Essential businesses or assets, things people will always need: food, water, energy, skills. These are assets rooted in reality, not paper promises. They don't guarantee riches, but they protect you from silent theft. Second, build margin. Inflation punishes the fragile. If your budget is stretched to the edge, every price hike becomes a crisis. So reduce unnecessary expenses. Avoid bad debt. Keep emergency reserves. Resilience isn't flashy, but it's powerful. Third, think long-term. When inflation hits, people panic. They chase quick profits, they speculate, they overreact. Don't. Zoom out. Focus on what holds value across time: skills, assets, relationships, mindset. Because while governments inflate, you can still compound knowledge, discipline, and smart decisions. And finally, stay informed. Most people won't see the collapse coming, even as it unfolds around them. But if you understand the signs, the traps, and the options, you'll not only survive, you'll build from it. Because in every crisis, there are two types of people: those waiting to be rescued, and those quietly building lifeboats. In the end, inflation isn't just about economics. It's about agency. Because while the system may be rigged, your response doesn't have to be. You don't control interest rates, or government budgets, or global markets. But you do control how you prepare, what you value, where you put your trust. And here's the truth: every dollar you save today, wisely, intentionally, is a vote for your future self. Every ounce of gold, every Satoshi of Bitcoin, every skill you master is a defense against a system that punishes those who wait. Yes, the storm is coming. In some ways, it's already here. But storms don't just destroy, they reveal. They show who was ready, who built strong foundations, who understood that real wealth isn't what you spend, it's what you keep, what you grow, and what no one can silently steal from you. So the next time prices rise, the next time a politician promises free money, the next time someone says, "Don't worry, it's under control," remember this: real value doesn't come from printing presses. It comes from clarity, discipline, and the courage to act when others stay still. If this video helped you understand what's really happening behind rising prices and shrinking dollars, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who needs to hear this. And here's a question for you. If you had to protect your money for the next 10 years without trusting banks or governments, what would you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for watching. Hey, and remember, every dollar you protect today is one you won't have to chase tomorrow.